Today I'm going to be talking about misconceptions of anxiety. This is something I've wanted to talk about for a really long time because this is something that everybody with anxiety has probably experienced at some point. It is something that's quite hard to deal with. I think when you have anxiety, you feel quite a lot of the time that people don't understand and that people think it's something different than it actually is. People have this idea of what anxiety is, and that's actually not what it is. Anxiety is a really difficult, quite crippling thing to deal with, and I don't think people always understand that, and that's quite hard when people don't understand that because it means that they don't understand a big part of who you are. There is a massive difference between somebody not understanding because they've never been taught about mental illness. So I know loads of people who they don't understand mental illness because they've never had it and they've never known anybody that has it, and they're not a bad person, it's just because they've never encountered anxiety or depression before, and that's why they don't understand. That doesn't make them bad at all. It makes them maybe slightly ignorant, maybe slightly they just don't know what it's like to have anxiety, and that's perfectly fine. But there are people, I think, that go out of their way maybe to make you upset, maybe to try and push your buttons. There are going to be people like that. So I think being able to distinguish between somebody that's trying to upset you and trying to understand you is really important, so you know who is worth keeping in your life and who is not. So I'm going to talk about 10 misconceptions of anxiety. There are plenty more. There are so many misconceptions that people with anxiety face every single day, and I suppose this is just 10 of them. The first misconception is that everybody has it to an extent. I mean, that's not true. I suppose everybody suffers with stress and everybody suffers with nerves, but I think, to me, anxiety is a completely different thing from stress and nerves and all the rest of it. I don't think that everybody suffers with anxiety. I don't think everybody has it to an extent. I think it's an illness. It's like depression. You wouldn't say that everybody has depression to a certain extent. You would say that everybody has shit days and everybody gets sad and everybody has bad times in their life, but not everybody has had depression. Not everyone has experienced it. It's the exact same with anxiety. You've probably had really nervous days, you've probably had really stressful days and really uneasy days, but not everybody suffers with anxiety, I don't think. The second misconception is that anxiety isn't a big deal. I think a lot of people think that anxiety isn't a big thing. I've been told before, well, at least you don't have depression, which I was quite baffled about because I see anxiety and depression as equally debilitating. I've never suffered with depression, but I can see that it looks like a very debilitating, crippling illness to have, and anxiety is just the same. I think if somebody doesn't know something about anxiety, I would much rather they ask me. I would much rather they asked, how does it affect your life, rather than just coming to the conclusion that anxiety isn't a big deal and anxiety doesn't affect your life. Anxiety affects your life massively, and it makes you unable to do things that you want to do, and it's a really hard thing to have to go through. It is a massive deal. Number 3 is it's an age thing. I'm guessing a lot of other young women have experienced this situation. People have implied that I will grow out of my anxiety and it's just a stage, or it's because of my hormones and because I'm a young woman and all the rest of it. Having a mental illness and being hormonal are two very different things. It is very offensive to assume that somebody's mental illness is down to their hormones. It's definitely not. It's definitely a chemical imbalance in the brain, and that's exactly what it is. You can have that at any age. I've had anxiety since I was 10, and I wasn't a hormonal young woman when I was 10. It is just something that some people have, and I think it's very unlucky that I've had anxiety. I've not really had many massive traumatic experiences. I think I'm just unlucky, and my brain's just unlucky, and it's just kind of happened. Another misconception is to fix your anxiety, you just have to push yourself. This is a really offensive thing to say to somebody. If you have a friend or a loved one or whatever that has anxiety, never say, well, you don't try hard enough. Never say, just try. Never say, just do it. I think people think that encouraging their friends or their loved ones or family members is a good thing. I think encouraging them is a good thing, but I think putting pressure on them could be the worst thing that you ever do. I know with my anxiety is about pressure, and whenever there's a slight bit of pressure on me, that's when I completely crumble and I can't actually deal with any situations, and I just go to bed and I can't deal with anything if there's a slight bit of pressure on me. I'm obviously getting better and I'm managing to have little bits of pressure put on me, like going to work and all that kind of thing. But putting pressure on somebody with anxiety, making them feel like they aren't trying, making them feel like they have to recover, making them feel like they don't have a choice other than to go out and just like deal with the world, is really unfair. And you're forgetting that what you see is something completely different than what's going on in that person's mind. That person might be having the worst day of their life up in their mind, but they seem okay. Number 5 is it's all in the mind. This is, I suppose, correct. Anxiety does stem from the mind. It's a chemical imbalance in the brain. It's sometimes happens from some different traumas that you've had in your life. Sometimes it happens randomly to different people. I suppose it does stem from the brain, but I think what people don't understand is that anxiety can be very physical. You can feel physically exhausted, you can feel physically ill. Some people are physically ill. You can have bowel issues, you can have stomach issues, you can have hair loss. There's so many things that come along with anxiety that are side effects, physical side effects of you having a mental illness. It's very, very, very rare that somebody would have anxiety or depression and just have the thoughts and just have the mental process. Most of the time, that person will also have really quite severe physical issues as well. Number 6 is that we're all making it up to get attention. I think most people know by now that mental illness is a real thing. Maybe like 40, maybe even 30 years ago, maybe even 20 years ago, people definitely were a lot more people thought that it was made up and that it was something that people did to get attention or something that people did to get out of things, or I don't really understand, but people didn't believe that anxiety and depression was a thing. I think most people nowadays know anxiety and depression. They're both very real illnesses and they're there to be taken seriously. But there are still people out there that don't take it seriously and that think that because you look fine, that you are fine. There's people out there that think you physically can, just get on with it. And that's, I think that is still a taboo. I think that is what a lot of people think. You can physically still get on with it. It's not actually the case. You can't physically get on with it. When you're having thought processes that are terrifying and physical pains, it is hard to get up out of bed and it is a very real thing. It's definitely not made up to get attention. I think that's the last thing on people's mind, is trying to get attention. In fact, a lot of people, when they have panic attacks, when they have anxiety, a lot of people just want to be by themselves and they don't want to tell anybody and they don't want to talk about it. So it's definitely not something that's made up for attention. The next misconception is we are all introverts and are all scared of big crowds. This is a misconception that I think a lot of people think. I think a lot of people that don't suffer with anxiety think that all people with anxiety hate big crowds and they are not good in social situations and they would prefer to be by themselves and are very introverted. And I think that that's a lot of the time the case for people with social anxiety, but social anxiety and generalised anxiety are very different things. So I have generalised anxiety. I find it very easy to talk to people. I find it very easy to be in large groups. I find it actually better to be in large groups. I prefer being in a big group of people than one-on-one. I like going to festivals, I like going to gigs. I have anxiety in a different way when it comes to festivals and gigs, but it's not the amount of people. And I am quite introverted in some ways and I'm quite extroverted in other ways. And I'm very confident. Being introverted and being shy and quiet, that's very different from having anxiety. I think social anxiety and generalised anxiety are very often mixed up, and people think that social anxiety is what anxiety is, when there's actually many, many factors and many different branches of anxiety. Another misconception is that antidepressants will make you worse. This is a really annoying one for me. I started taking antidepressants. I started taking citalopram I think about a year ago, and it has changed my life drastically. It really improved my life. It's made me so much better. I'm still not 100% better. I'm still definitely working on a lot of things to make myself less anxious, but it's actually given me the confidence and the courage. It's taken away a lot of the physical symptoms. I think for me, the worst part of my anxiety was the physical symptoms and the feeling of physical exhaustion and nausea and all the rest of it. That was what was making me really, really unable to cope. and antidepressants took a lot of the physical symptoms away, and it really dulled them down. That's why I'm able to work, and that's why I'm able to go out and see my friends and all those kinds of things now. Having said that, antidepressants don't always work for everybody. Sometimes people don't agree with them, sometimes it'll take somebody a long time to figure out which antidepressant works best for them. I will always encourage people who are going through anxiety to try antidepressants. My advice would be, don't listen to somebody that has never had anxiety or depression. They're telling you not to take antidepressants. They don't know how severe anxiety and depression is. I mean, listen to other people's opinions about it, that's fine, but it is down to you, and it's you that's actually suffering with this illness. Other people that haven't had mental illnesses don't know how you feel. You should always be the one that decides at the end of the day whether you want to take medication, whether you want to go to therapy, and what action you want to take for your mental illness. Number 9, people with anxiety can snap out of it whenever they feel like it. I think this is something that when I was having anxiety and when I was starting to get a bit better, I was actually really scared of. Like, I was really scared that people would think, well, she's fine one day and then she's ill the next, like she must just be making it up. That I was really paranoid that people actually thought that about me, and I don't know whether the people did think that about me. I don't know now, I'm not really bothered now, but anxiety doesn't work in the way that when you really want to do something, you can just tell your anxiety to go away and it'll go away. You have good days and you have bad days. It's like somebody that's overcoming any illness. You'll have good days and you'll have bad days, and it's just all part of recovering. It's very normal, and it should be quite self-explanatory that sometimes you will feel better and sometimes you will feel worse. It's just the way it is, and people definitely can't snap out of it whenever they feel like it. And the last misconception is that people won't get better unless they go to therapy. This is something I thought for a really long time. I thought that if I didn't go to therapy then I would never overcome my anxiety, and that it was something that was 100% necessary to overcome a mental illness, but it's not. I have been to loads of therapists in the past, and the vast majority of them were really not helpful and actually made me feel a lot worse in some cases. This isn't saying that you shouldn't try therapy. I think everyone should give it a go if they feel like it, just like antidepressants. If you feel like giving it a go, then go for it. But for me, working with myself and focusing on myself and setting my own targets and helping my own self, that was what made me better. And it was gathering a large support system around me, and it was being in a non-pressured environment. That's what made me flourish, and that's what made me feel a lot better. I might one day decide to go back to therapy, and that's absolutely fine. If I ever feel the need to go back, then I will. But it's not the be-all and end-all, and you can definitely still get better without having therapy. So those are my 10 misconceptions of anxiety. If you have any other anxiety misconceptions that you've ever faced, please let me know down below. If you faced any of these misconceptions, then let me know as well. If you've got any video ideas or anything that you would specifically like me to film, then let me know that as well. Thanks very much for watching this video, and I'll see you soon.